Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Business Insights room. Every Thursday, Tim Sullivan and I, Maya Matsuoka, lead a discussion looking for insights, developments, and new opportunities for the business in Japan. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region.
Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to have just Tim and Yuka and me as speakers because we're going to talk about strategies of making the best of your life in Japan. It probably sounds a little bit heavy. I don't know. I hope it doesn't, but because we quite often hear and see people being, or having difficulties here in Japan. And it is usually with people who have just come to the country or have been here for a short period of time, like 2 or 3 years. Usually those people don't speak the language. Some of them do. But yeah, it's really difficult to get your way around, especially if you work in Japan and you haven't prepared with some knowledge about how the culture is here and what business practices are common here. So, of course, there are a lot of different levels and degrees of acceptance among us, the foreigners. And when I say acceptance of the local practices and ways of thinking. But there are many things which we can do actually to make our life here not just easier but enjoyable as well. And of course, we've got Tim and Yuka. Yuka is she was born in Japan. Tim was born in the United States, but he has a long history of working with Japanese organization, also being married to the lovely Kurumi-san. And me, I have been here just for 20 years. And of course, I have been married to my Japanese husband for about the same time. Today, we're going to have a friendly conversation, and we invite everybody who is in the audience to join us. If and when you feel joining us and sharing your observations and comments. And of course, if you have questions, just raise your hand and let us know. We'll bring you up on stage. So Yuka, I know that you have a lot of questions, and I'm just impatient to hear them.
Okay, thank you, Maya. Just as a background, why I picked these two that I want to ask Tami-san, Timothy, the questions, because we have been talking about, like Maya just stated, some people are happier, quite frankly, in Japan. I'm talking about, non-Japanese foreigners who has come to Japan, and it seems like they are enjoying themselves. But some people are simply miserable. And excuse me. And then so far, I know I've only known Maya and then Timothy from this club, but so far I have gathered these two are the maybe the happiest people, happiest foreigners in Japan that I have encountered. And I thought, what is the secret? It must be something about these two. So I begged these two, said, hey, for the series one, it's just simply my plan. But I want to ask Timothy about maybe his life or maybe his personality or what has led him to come to Japan. And then, of course, he has lovely wife, as Maya said. That has something to do with, his happy life in Japan. But in my mind, I really want to ask Timothy today, maybe, so who he is or how he has lived maybe outside of Japan and inside Japan has led to his, his strategy of making the best of his life in Japan. So, so very briefly, so Timothy, you were born in Chicago, am I right?
Yes, I was, and thank you for all those nice words you said. Yeah, I was born in Chicago. I'm probably one of the most unlikely people who would go live in a foreign country. 17 years old, I dropped out of high school, so I didn't graduate, and I didn't like my father, who was a strict disciplinarian. I said I don't like discipline, so I showed him. I joined the Navy. Out of the frying pan into the fire. And it's the best thing that happened to me. I tested out for languages, and I ended up going to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, believe it or not, to study Russian. And I don't speak it anymore. That was a long time ago. But And so I studied that. So I actually had college credits before I had a diploma. And somebody recently posted that the military has downgraded the requirements for entry. This was on LinkedIn. And now you don't need to have a high school diploma anymore. So you had to until recent times. And in my case, it helped me, right? So anyway, when you graduate from school, they ask you to pick a place where you want to go, and they give you a menu. This is the Navy. It's called your dream sheet, because that's all it is, your dream. And they give you a list of countries around the world, and you rank the ones you want to go to. So Rhoda, Spain was the first on my list. And the second on my list was Edsel, Scotland. And I had no idea. I just heard they were nice places. That was the extent of my knowledge of those two places. And then there was a third one. And we were told we were going to Japan no matter what. We were all going to go to Misawa, Japan. And so my friend and I were filling it out together. And we said, screw them. We're not going to put Misawa, Japan. We're going to put anything but. And he goes, how about this place, Atsugi? And I go, yeah, where's that? I don't know. I think it's near Tokyo. Okay, let's sign up for Atsugi. Out of all the people in my class, there were like 50, 48 went to Misawa, and 2 of us went to Atsugi. So basically, I was brought to Japan kicking and screaming. I didn't want to come here. But when I got here, I said, well, I might as well make the best of it. And the first thing was to move off base, live amongst the locals. First 6 months, I was really lonely. I was homesick. And then I made some friends. And this is what you talk about, like, why are some people happy? And I just listed 4 things, but number 4 on the list is luck, right? I just stumbled. I was lucky. I just bumbled into like really nice, open-minded, fun people.
Well, you know what? I'm sorry. Let me interrupt you briefly.
Sure.
See, luck. I don't know about that though. I know, luck can happen, but I think maybe, there's something about you might sort of, create the luck for you, because it's just kind of easygoingness about your plan to come to Japan. And like you pick Atsugi, and then you two went, and then you said 6 months. But you said you lived off base. Why is that? I thought that typically people want to live on base.
A lot of people did, and I was discouraged from living off base by people who had been there a couple of years already. These were all people I worked with in the military, right? And they're like, "Oh man, now the Japanese." By the way, these people had no idea what they were talking about, but they thought they did, and they were telling me, "Oh, Japanese, they don't like Americans, and you don't want to live off base." A lot of people told me, and it was me and my friend, and we said, "Screw you." We moved off, and you're right. You make luck, but there's always still an element of luck. That's my point. But I agree with you. You make your luck, and I guess.
But, okay, so you think that the fact that you guys lived off base has led you sort of make friends with Japanese more easily, or that's luck?
Yes, it helped us make friends, but what preceded that was the mindset to do it. You know what I'm saying? To want to move off base, unlike most people. And then of all the military people who come to Japan, throughout, the last 30, 40, 50 years, only a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of a percentage ends up staying. You know what I mean? Like, so in that sense, I guess I was just a different person. But what motivated me to stay was when I originally showed up and I was taking the bus from Haneda to Atsugi, and I'm looking out the window and I'm looking at kanji. Suddenly I'm illiterate. And, I was pretty good with languages. So I go, okay, 2.5 years, by the time I leave, I'm going to be fluent in Japanese. And I wasn't even close. I could order a beer and a ticket and get a pretty girl's phone number, but that was about it. I couldn't converse. So I had 2 motivations: to stay and keep hanging with my friends, who they were a blast. They're all musicians, and learn the language. So that was my motivation. And so I actually got my discharge in Japan. Normally they fly you back to a base and then you get your discharge there, right? So I got mine here in Japan, and I just stayed. And went to Waseda for a year. Got good enough. My Japanese got good enough to be dangerous. And what I mean by that is I was learning how to say things, but I still didn't know the cultural rules of the road. You know what I mean? I knew how to drive my car, but I didn't know that I was supposed to be on the right side of the road, the left side of the road, instead of the right side of the road. So if you learn a foreign language without knowing the cultural rules, you're kind of dangerous. You're using it as a weapon by accident sometimes, you know.
Do you have any example that maybe you can share for for the audience?
Just being direct, you know,
Oh,
how would I say it? I had no self-awareness of my own culture. Does that make sense? Like when you grow up in your own culture, the old joke is the guy says to the fish, "Hey, fish, how's the water?" And the fish says, "What the hell is water?" Well, that's
that's a good. That okay.
yeah, and that's culture, right? So like in my mind, I'm taking certain values for granted. In fact, I'm not even conscious of them. They're just baked into my thinking, like individualism, equality. Do you tell the truth or do you tell a polite lie to keep the harmony? Oh, in my culture, we told the truth, even if we didn't. We want to believe we did. Fairness, logic, precise verbal communication, things that are like baked into our behavior we don't even think about it. And then we're kind of projecting that onto our hosts. I was, because I had no clue not only what their values were, but I wasn't even conscious of my own values, right? So that was a tough one. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think that because I'm sort of like our life is kind of we went opposite way, right? You're American
Right.
living in Japan, and I'm Japanese living in the U.S. And then I'm thinking maybe what was the water for me as a fish, and I have to think about that. But anyway, so you said your friends they're all musicians, so it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, having the common interest in something, it doesn't have to be music.
Right.
So that
Right.
sort of help you to get closer with the Japanese folks.
Honestly, I'll be really honest with you. It just started out hanging out at a guy's bar who happened to be a musician, and we became friends, and all his musician friends would come there. And so they all kind of knew each other. And as you know, most musicians, even semi-successful ones, tend to be kind of poor. They don't get paid well, right? And a lot of these musicians, they're professionals. They want to be close to Yokohama and Tokyo, but they don't want to pay the Yokohama-Tokyo real estate prices. So they live in Yamato, which is within an hour of Tokyo and within 20, 25 minutes of Yokohama. And so that's where the gigs are. And back then, it probably still is relative to Tokyo, it was pretty cheap, you know. I rented a house for Yonman yen a month, right? A 2-bedroom house. Again, this is back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, right? So it really started out drinking or just hanging out at a bar where I did my homework. And that's how I got to know him.
Okay, so everyone go to bar. Just kidding.
No, and that's why I don't recommend this for other people. I'm just saying that's what happened to me, right?
Okay. So you said after discharge, so how long did you stay in Japan?
10 years.
10 years. But you went to Hawaii though, right? So that's after 10 years?
Oh, yeah. No, actually, so the first 2.5 years was in the Navy, right? I was still in the Navy. And then the remaining, 7.5, I was, I went to college. So I went to Waseda just for their Gogaku Kenkyujo for, it was a 1-year cram course kind of. And then 4 years at ICU. I graduated from ICU in 85. And then I worked. And this was during the boom years. This was like, man, there was just work everywhere and high paying jobs. And I was doing really well. And a client recruited me to join their company and go start up a new factory in Portland, Tennessee. And I wanted to break out of the whole Eikaiwa world. And this was a chance to learn Japanese manufacturing. And so I jumped on it. It was like going to college, getting a master's degree. We built a plant from zero. So, that means we had to build new systems. So it's just a tremendous learning experience. I took a big pay cut, about half. But again, you're moving from Japan to Tennessee, so the cost of living was lower. But I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it for the education. To me, it was like going to college, getting paid to go to college, right? So I did that, stayed in Tennessee for 5 years, ended up working for an American company in the Chicago area, and first in sales, and then I ran the factory. And I realized I wasn't making stuff was not my passion. It was fun building stuff, but my personality doesn't enjoy maintaining things. I like to build them and improve them. I just don't like to maintain them, and it wasn't meaningful for me. So I left the company. It was amicable. It was amicable. I still love these guys, and started my own company. And then 5 months later, the planes hit the towers in New York. So it wasn't real good timing on my part. But thankfully, I was very lucky, and I had a great customer. I can't say who it was, but this customer had 400 suppliers, and I actively went and helped their Japanese and American staffs through training and counseling and interfacing them to get on the same page and realize that, a lot of the stuff they're fighting about is just based on misunderstandings, and just get them to do a dialogue. And I did that for 17, 18 years. And it was not easy. The travel was the hard part, but it was the most rewarding and meaningful work I've ever done. And part of that time I was in Hawaii. So the last 14 years I was in Hawaii. So we moved from Chicago because I just got sick of shoveling snow. And 2006 we moved to Hawaii. And
Okay, so you said, because, and I was just thinking that when you said you cannot share the name of your company, but then not too many companies have 400 suppliers.
Yep.
So like I said, who can it be? But anyway,
Yeah.
So you said, going back to so where have you learned sort of Japanese style management though? Like, was that it with the company in Portland, Tennessee?
Yes.
By the way, I didn't know that Tennessee has Portland, but only okay.
Yeah, that was my first exposure. And in fact, I learned the Japanese way before I learned the American way. And I ended up working for an American company because I felt like I knew the Japanese side better than my own culture side. So I wanted to go work for an American company to figure out what is American corporate culture. And I went in sales, and I don't like sales, but I took it just because it was new. I tried it, and I was actually in sales, and I learned a lot, like the good things and the bad things of American management and corporate culture. Stuff I liked and stuff I hated. And I can say that about Japan side too. There's stuff I like and stuff I hate. And so that was interesting. And then I worked there for 4 years in sales, but then I got recruited by Japan Management Association, Associate Consultants, Japanese say Nihon no Ritsu Kyokai. And for 2 years, I was on the road 100%, going to factories and helping them improve their operations through Kaizen activities. And so it's industrial engineering / babysitting. And I learned more in those 2 years than I did the previous 10. So that was a really good, I didn't like the travel, but it was like, again, going to school for 2 years. So. Okay.
Now, so for the audience, I have read your comments and questions, and then maybe we can discuss the definition of happiness a little bit later on. And then also, Christopher, I think we're going to interview or talk with Maya in the series 2, which is next week. Is this the correct assumption, Maya?
Sorry. Yeah, maybe. Yes, I guess. Okay.
Yes. Oh, do you want to talk about you today?
Oh,
yes, I think the people want Maya. So Maya.
I don't think so. It's just, yeah. Okay, anyway. We shouldn't be so contradicting each other. I apologize for this.
Yeah. No. I mean, we go with the flow. Actually, I was very curious about, Timothy's, opinion or take, because it's based on his, his experience. The major difference, with the Japanese and American management and business style. But I think it may take forever to talk about that. So,
okay, Yuka, let's do so. Okay, today is Tim's time, and let's talk with Tim and about Tim. So next week it will be me.
Okay, but Maya, so do you have any comments or question about Timothy? It's very colorful, or I should say, it's a very meaningful life so far.
Oh, yeah, I think I should have a lot of questions to him, even though we talk a lot, when we are not on Clubhouse. So. Yes, Tim, you mentioned that you need to be open-minded, right? And so my question to you is why do you think you became open-minded? Because I believe that in childhood, there are certain factors that actually help people develop that open-mindedness. And when you look back at your childhood and, your upbringing and your family, do you think that there was anything that helped you develop that feature?
I don't know. I mean, I wish I had a good answer. I try to just look at the positive things and opportunities. I've always kind of had that. I mean, some people don't like this word, but I was privileged, and I mean it in a good way. I'm not ashamed of it, but I had parents who loved each other, and so I had a good foundation. As much as I fought my dad, that was my fault. But so I don't know. I think I was just lucky. It's a mystery. I don't know. I try to look for the positive, and I try to be realistic about the negative. But to me, complaining and focusing on negative stuff it isn't fun. It's more fun to focus on the positive and enjoy it, and lean into it. And adapting. I think I didn't know how to adapt until I came here. Like, Japan taught me how to adapt. And I think most people who move to a foreign country who end up adapting, it makes them more adaptable in a very generic way, and they can go anywhere and adapt, Going from Chicago to Hawaii, it was easy to adapt. Hawaii's kind of like Japan, actually. So I'm sorry if I didn't really answer that question very well. I don't know why I'm that way.
Well, I think you answered it. Yeah.
Yes, you did. No problem at all. So don't worry about that.
It's a good question. I didn't know how to answer it.
No, I asked you because as a mother, I can see people around me who have different characters, and they have, as I said in the beginning, different level of acceptance of the reality around them. And some of them are more optimistic, some of them are more pessimistic. And as a mother with a young child, I always wonder if there is something, which as a parent I can do. Because I want my daughter to be on the optimistic side of life, right? And actually, I believe that people who have this more open mindset are actually happier in life than others. And of course, as a mother, I want to, to create that or to help my daughter build that mindset. That's why I asked, and of course, I would appreciate everybody in the audience. If you have a view on this, just let us know, join us here and let me know too. Okay, but this was my question, and I gave you the reasons for asking it. So Yuka, you go now.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of interesting that Timothy said he has become more adapting, flexible. That I think I used the phrase flexible describing you guys in the past when we had a chance to chat. And then probably that your flexibility has come with the fact that you have something to compare to. So I'm going to give you a very, very, very minor example, but my microwave broke down and I don't cook. And then to me, cooking is just to open the door of my microwave oven. And then realize how I took it for granted, my life with microwave. And then I've learned to, even the making a hot water with the pot, the stovetop oven. And then then I realized, okay, there is a life without the microwave. So I know this is a very stupid example, but for the Timothy, because you have something to compare to, and then you said there is pros and cons with the life in Japan, but pros and cons of U.S. life in the U.S. and then so maybe you talk to yourself saying, yeah, Japanese do things this way, so okay, that's their way, and you may just accept that. So what do you think of my take on this, Timothy?
Yeah, I think everybody in the audience who has lived in a foreign country would agree. I think that, if you don't know what hot is, you don't know what cold is. It's kind of like you need to have the experiences, as you said, to play off each other, to have a frame of reference and a comparison. So yeah, I agree. And again, I read a lot of, there are certain people and their whole thing is about all the terrible things about Japan. And I told Maya this before. If you read their stuff and you're like, okay, you know what? A lot of the stuff they're saying is true. I can't disagree with it. But look at all the stuff they're not saying. What are they leaving out? And to me, it's about having a ledger. It's about recognizing both sides. And each person has to decide, do the positives outweigh the negatives or vice versa? And then based on that, you make a decision whether you want to live there or, whether to adjust or what you want to do, right? In my case and in Maya's case, the positives outweigh the negatives. And, what are some of the positives? I think we saw a lot of it in the pandemic. I just think the fact that people just did the right thing for the most part. And I think Japan weathered the pandemic better than any country in terms of deaths per capita, right? Which is surprising because there's so many elderly folks here, right? So that's an example of, wow, the power of Japanese culture to pull together. You can't mandate any of this, and yet they're all doing it, and then there's a price to that too. There's a downside as well. But so for me personally, being in Japan during the pandemic, I feel like really lucky. Just the time and place. And I don't know if anybody else agrees with me.
I agree with you. Yes, and I think that during the pandemic, yes, it was really so much better to be here, even though people say, yes, the country was really closed for foreigners. And at some point, even, not only foreigners, but residents couldn't come back as well, which was really unfortunate, if I can say so. But at the same time, we enjoyed relative freedom of movement. And also, there wasn't unrest. Like social unrest. There was probably a lot of anxiety among the population, but we still didn't feel it in such a deep way as I hear, my family and friends back home felt it.
Yeah, I agree. And, that's kind of a good point to make too. So one of the things I might say as a negative was how they handled, banning foreigners from coming in. And even when I critique Japan on something like that, this is honest to God, it's coming from a place of love because I believe it hurts Japan. And I agree that Japan has to make its own decisions. But when I see them making a decision that I think is hurting them, it breaks my heart. You know what I mean? So it's not coming from a place of hate ever. It's always coming from a place of love. And same with critiquing my own country. Just because you critique your country doesn't mean you hate it. That's nonsense.
Yeah, I know. Like sometimes I, criticize Japan because I expect a lot from my country. Like Japan has a power to do better. That's my belief, based on which I sometimes criticize. But then if somebody speak badly about Japan, then I come around and just defend it. But anyway, so now we were at Hawaii, but then you have decided to come back to Japan. Is that again the company sends you back to Japan?
No.
Okay.
I'm retired.
So you retired to Hawaii? Oh, okay.
We came back for a couple of reasons. We always planned. We sort of planned to end up in Japan, just for the healthcare, for no other reason. But not only that, we love Japan. My wife's Japanese. So when I first went to America with the company in Tennessee, the plan was to be there for 2 years. It was a 2-year contract, and then come back to Japan and live in Japan forever. And we ended up staying over 30 years in the U.S. So Kurumi had not seen her mother very much, except visits. So we decided her mother's up there, 90 years old, closer to 91, to spend some time with her mom, take care of her, and reconnect with our friends. So 3 years ago, that's what we did. We moved back, and it's been great. I love it. I'm really lucky.
Oh, so you made back to Japan just in time for COVID.
Yeah, dumb luck, right?
Okay,
And just I want to clarify, when I say Japan did well, I'm talking about number of deaths. And I just read this in the paper. It's like Japan, is this, Maya, did you read this? Anybody else read it? Like the number of deaths here were like the lowest in the world?
Yes, I read that somewhere too.
Right?
It may not be the same article, but I read it somewhere. Yes.
So that's my barometer. I'm not talking about how the government handled it. I'm talking about how Japanese culture dealt with it. That's my only point, right? I think just the culture dealt with it really well, if that is your measure, and that's my measure, like how many deaths, right? So, and that's all I know. I don't know much about it.
Got it. So I still wanted to know what has led to your a glass half full type of personality, but it's probably hard. Maybe you have to sit down on the couch and tell me all about your mother. Just kidding. So actually, I have more sensitive question because so we have talked about this, and then this issue came up in a different clubhouse room where we were talking about business life in Japan. And, this term came up, and then, it has led to very lively, friendly discussion. The term, we talked about this, gaijin, and then polite way is gaikokujin. And then half of so the room, I was only Japanese, and then all the other guys were non-Japanese. So and then they're all male, and they have lived. I think the shortest guy on the 6 years, and the longest tenure in Japan was maybe 20. So I can say they know Japanese way of life. And then so gaijin, and the half of the room said they don't care. The remaining half said they're offended because it's not the term, the sentiment, intention behind this term. They say, the gaijin sort of convey, it may not be the speaker's intention, but that's how it's being taken by the receiver of this term. Like gaijin meaning like you're not from here. We don't like you. So they say the gaijin term has this connotation. But Timothy, you said though you don't care about this term, and then if anybody in the audience have some opinion about this term, I would love to hear about this. Because and then now when I'm going back to Japan, I will never use gaijin. But seriously, I've learned I can learn. So okay, Timothy.
No, well, first of all, I want to say I respect everyone's right to be offended by anything they want to be offended by, whether it's a word or whatever. So, you can't tell people how they should feel. But in my case, I don't let that word offend me for a couple reasons. One is I've heard it used without any malice behind it. It was just ignorance, I didn't feel hate from it. And I've had friends tell me jokingly, and we're just joking around. These are my Japanese friends, right? My 91-year-old mother-in-law still calls me the gaijin, and we laugh, and it's funny. I just accept it. So I don't let words hurt me, certainly from strangers. I don't want to give anybody that power over me. Again, most of the time, I think it's not meant with malice. And when it is meant with malice, I dismiss that point of view and say, oh, that poor guy just doesn't know, and I move on. But that's me. I'm not going to tell other people how they should feel, but that's kind of my rationale behind it. And then the other point is, rather than getting angry about it, I see my role as just, I'm an ambassador, connecting with Japanese people, show them my humanity, and so they see who I am as a human being. And then once you're their friends, I've said to Japanese friends, hey, you want to ixnay on the gaijin thing because a lot of foreigners are offended by it. I'm not, but a lot of foreigners are. And most of them are like, oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay. And then they stopped using it. So to me, I think that's a more productive approach. Engage, share your humanity, and then educate if you can in a kind way. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. So Maya, you said you don't get offended by this term either, right?
Oh no, I don't. I mean, just like Tim, I believe that you can control your reactions to whatever happens to you, and of course there are some things which you cannot. But at the same time, I have noticed that people here don't use the word gaijin in a malicious way, right? They don't intend to offend you. And if they don't, there is no need to feel offended, right? But if somebody, for some reason just uses it like an offense, then okay, let them be and walk away. There is no need to engage, in meaningless things. But basically, I have never seen anybody, around me here in Japan use the word in an offensive way. And that's
now. What's the difference between gaijin and gaikokujin? To me, it's the same.
Right?
So I have no idea. Yeah. One is longer and more syllables. I have no idea why.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. To me, and I'm not Japanese, okay? To me, just not semantically, but the syllables, in addition to the different number of syllables, we have the word stranger and foreigner. The two words, like gaijin is stranger and then gaikokujin is a foreigner. But when you say a stranger, we use the word stranger in English, like beware of strangers. And that's what is, it's not really a problem. Like, well, a stranger is somebody you don't know. And what is offensive about it?
Yeah, interesting. Like you said, if I'm offending somebody, I know I'm offending that person. I don't want to offend someone without knowing it. But anyway, the another topic that is sort of brought up in that room was this guy said, well, he said, I don't mind gaijin, but this phrase just the annoyed the heck out of me. Is heck a loud term in Clubhouse? But anyway, okay. So, he said, "Oh, you just don't get it because you are not Japanese." Now, and I was just thinking to myself, like I live in the US. There are things that I don't get because I wasn't born here. So, I don't want to make this room very politically charged, but, something about guns and those things. And I never can meet, the see eye to eye with my hubby because I wasn't born here. So it's okay that, something I don't get because I have not grown up here. But if somebody tells you to, hey, you don't get this because you are not Japanese, now, how would you feel about that? Are you okay with that?
I would say, yeah, you're right. In fact, it's funny. I was just talking to Maya about this. Even someone like me, I've been dealing with Japan for 44 years. Like, routinely, I am seeking out advice from Japanese friends, including my wife, saying, "Oh, I'm in this situation as a Japanese. How would you deal with it?" And every time I do it, I learn something. I learn a different perspective. Like this, to me, consulting with Japanese natives is an ongoing process, and that I'm just going to keep doing, because every time I get that perspective, I learn a little bit more, and I'm still plugging away. That's how I do it.
Maya?
Yuka, could you help me with the question once again, because I was concentrated on the chat.
I know. Yeah, I'm sorry. I took you by surprise. I was saying that, how would you feel if somebody tells you, Maya, you just don't get it because you are not Japanese?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that now probably I would be okay with this because, well, I'm not Japanese. This is a fact. I mean, of course, my name looks and sounds very Japanese if you don't know me. But I mean, if you have met me and talked with me, you certainly know that I'm not Japanese. So, and I cannot go against it. I was not born here. I was not raised here. So it's true. And there are a lot of things which I don't understand yet. I mean, like I still talk a lot and I ask a lot of questions to my husband, to my friends, my mother-in-law, when I don't understand something. So I'm not just somebody who would say, yeah, I have been here for such a long time, so I know everything. No, not at all. I mean, and I'm sure that even, it's just what it is. I cannot go against the facts and what is the reality here. So I am still learning. That's it.
Yeah, I am learning too. I mean, sometimes I'm learning about what the being Japanese means. So, I have a U.S. passport, but I consider myself a Japanese. So, oops, I get this right, but okay. So, sometimes, I want to be better at being Japanese, but I don't know. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I have noticed that, it happens a lot among my Japanese friends. And when we talk about these matters, it's I usually hear from them, well, when I move from one city to another, I need time to learn, and I need time to get used to the local culture there and the customs and so on, because everything is different. Even if you go to a different ward in Tokyo, I mean, you can feel that there is something which is not exactly the same, for example, in Minato-ku and then in Chiyoda-ku, right? Or even in Itabashiku, where I live, and so on. But the point is that, I mean, we are all learning, and life is a journey. And as long as we are open, to learning the differences, it's fine. It's okay. And I can see your point too, that like you were born in Japan and you now live in the United States, and you're still learning a lot of things about Japan because your perspective has changed, I believe. And that's how we actually get to see what is different. Because what Tim said in the beginning, that's the fable of the Zen fable of the tadpole and the frog. You never know what water is if you don't get out of the water. So yeah, I can see your point, Yuka, and I believe that we all need to be like that.
Actually, I am reading on this chat, and then they're talking very interesting things, and so yeah, so maybe like Laura and Crystal, you may want to come back to the stage and then talk to us. But because I've been thinking about what the happiness is, because this room title is the make the best of your life in Japan, and I don't want to sound like we over advertise the title. So I want to sort of want to get so how you can make the best. so what kind of mentality it takes, or it just some people are simply lucky, but I'm not so sure about that. I think so is there any insightful comment that you can share,
I,
Atami-san?
I would say focus on what you appreciate. That's happiness for me.
Yes, I agree on that. Focus on what you appreciate, and first appreciate what you have, I believe, is, the first step. Because very often I don't know why we humans are, wired to look over the fence and think that, the grass is greener on the other side. And sometimes it probably is, but there are so many things which we have and we just don't see, we don't appreciate. So first, find the things which you really have and which you're happy to have, appreciate them, and just if you do that, I'm sure that a lot of other things, good things, will happen to you.
Let me ask you, do you watch Japanese TV show, like a news, there are a bunch of morning show? Do you watch those? I've heard that there's so many negatives. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, well, I watch the news sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes when I can stop for 5 minutes and concentrate on the news, and I watch a show sometimes again with what's that? What was that girl?
Chico-chan?
Yes, that one. So, but otherwise, I don't watch really that much TV because, Yuka, as you said, my impression is that there is a lot of negative news there. And the way they present it is kind of depressing. So I prefer, to just get the news from, other outlets, let's say newspapers and so on.
Timothy, how about you? Where's your information source?
Mine is mostly internet, but every night we have dinner, and while we're having dinner, Japanese mom wants to watch the news because she's in the analog, world still, and she will be. She'll continue to be. And yeah, there's negative stuff. A lot of the stuff about the war in Ukraine, but there's also a lot of silly fluff too. So it's kind of amazes me how they mix. There's a lot of food corner stuff, visiting shops and people eating, saying "oishi," and so there's a mixture of both, I think.
Christopher said nobody watches TV. Sorry, but my folks still watches TV. That's their major news source, and then, I have to sort of update what's going on because in Japan, they're shooting in U.S. and then my folks see those news and a wildfire, and then nothing positive about U.S. in Japan seems like. That's why when I talk to my parents over the phone, I always have to update them. The things are not as bad as media made it out to be. So that's why. But I just wish still more positive news in anywhere. Twitter, Facebook, anywhere. I wish we can sort of highlight some positive, but I don't know.
Yes, I so much agree with you, and it really, I felt so strong about it, especially during the pandemic, because, and I'm talking not only about Japan, I'm talking about other countries as well, how every single media outlet and, TV program concentrated only on the death cases, and they never ever actually talked about how many people recovered from the disease, from COVID. And also, they never talked about what people should do to actually strengthen their immune system in order not to be fatally, impacted by the disease. And it was just lockdowns and death cases, lockdowns and death cases. And there was so much fear, Oh, it was really horrible. Yes, Lauren, I agree with you. It was just, I don't know, like the apocalypse had come. And there was no a glimpse of hope or whatever you call it. And of course, people were stressed, overstressed, depressed. And I think that the whole world is going to deal with this for years to come, with the psychological stress, which was inflicted by the media and also by the governments. Let's be honest here. It was horrible. Yeah.
I didn't know this. Lauren said, I remember the CNN death counter. Wow. Actually, I didn't know that about. Anyway, so it seems like, I have kind of sort of asked all the questions that I wanted to ask you, Timothy. That anything you can sort of address that I missed?
No, just we all look forward to Maya's story next week, and anybody's story. Like I love hearing stories about people who go live in another country, including yours, Yuka. So maybe someday you can share your story with us as well.
It takes a lot for me to talk about me, but anyway, yeah.
But I would love to hear your story, Yuka. Also, very
Mine is very boring. I was born in Japan, I grew up there, went to school, came to school here in US, and made my hobby, and ended up staying here. Oh, by the way, I wanted to share briefly that why I have come here. Oh, that's yeah. Okay, briefly. Okay.
Yes.
Oh shoot, I can't because this replay is on. Well,
Yes.
anyway, yeah. Well, briefly, that I was graduating college, and my parents, trying to, because I didn't have a boyfriend, and they were worried, nobody want to marry our daughter, and they were so worried. And then Harry, find someone. Like my parents were just, so worried, and then they talked to my mom's friend, and then they located this nice looking, the Tokyo University graduate, and there, he's a CPA, and he's getting close to set up his own practice, and so I did Omiya. Can you believe that? In this age.
Wow.
And then my mom, bought me a nice brand name dress. And I said, okay, for that dress, are we going to meet this guy? So I was, no rush to getting married. And so I was so relaxed, and I was just chatting away. And I thought we had a good time. And then, of course, I got the rejection from this guy. How dare he, right? But anyway, you know what he said? He said, I looked, too used to meeting with a guy. I'm like, what? It's like, I spoke my mind. And then he thought that, he prefer a shy lady. And I go, okay. And I thought, this country may not be for me. Anyway, so, and then after that, I said, I asked my parents, can I go to US to go to school? And then they thought, okay, we have to give up on, marrying her with Japanese gentleman. Then she may find, a non-Japanese guy overseas. Maybe I think that's their mindset. I don't know. But that's how I end up being here. So that's the end of my story. So people looking forward to my story next week, please.
Yuka, I'm going to get you here at some point, hopefully, to tell you, to tell us your story, your full story. So,
Just curious, Yuka, what part of Japan are you from originally?
Oh, actually, I'm from Mie Prefecture, but when we moved to Tokyo when we were when I was, in my in my youth.
Oh, what part of Tokyo were you in?
Oh, and Saitama. Okay, I don't.
Saitama.
Yeah, I don't usually get to, because when I say Saitama, non-Japanese don't get it. So that's why I said, oh, I'm from Tokyo area. Because my pride doesn't let me say Saitama. No, just kidding.
No, that's, basically it's Kanto, but it's true. If you say Kanto or Saitama or, any other place near Tokyo, it's really difficult for people to get, the idea of where it is. So, yes,
right.
Yes. But Yuka, I really would love to hear your story at some point. Not today, maybe not next time, but, we have time. We have all the time in the world. So,
yeah, okay.
Yes, thank you. Well, do you have any other questions to Tim? Probably, I don't know, and everybody in the audience. Maybe, yeah, we have talked a lot. There has been a very active discussion.
Thank you for coming and staying with us today. We will be on air next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, you can follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, we're looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you.